Cool. Welcome, Michael, to the Stillness Everyday Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to obviously get to where you're at now with the gym, but let's talk about where you started, what your profession is or trade outside of rolling and jiu-jitsu.
So I'm an exercise physiologist by trade. I started doing the undergraduate around about the same time as I started doing jiu-jitsu, which was quite handy because I tempered myself. Like the tendency is when you first start getting into it, you do 7 times a week, and then you end up sort of getting some overtraining issues and stuff that in the first 6 months. Doing the degree and jiu-jitsu at the same time has allowed me to remain relatively a low injury rate.
Yeah,
because you injure yourself in anything.
Yeah,
getting out of the bath or something like that. But I've been very fortunate. I haven't had too serious an injury throughout my timeline.
Does it help you with when you were developing in jiu-jitsu, like understanding the anatomy of the body, or?
Yeah,
really?
I think as I've progressed, so in the later stages, certainly has. I think once you've mastering certain concepts and things, I shouldn't say mastering, but getting better at certain concepts and things like that, you're able to see the mechanics rather than just sort of doing it to try and make the move happen, if that makes sense. Now that once you know the technique or move quite well, you can really start toying with the mechanics of someone a bit better, because you're not thinking about just getting the technique right. You're looking at the nuances of it over time. So once you've immersed yourself in it, then you can start really playing with body mechanics and stuff. But yeah, it certainly I feel has been beneficial.
So you're talking about like if I don't know, you had an arm bar or something, you're like what that's actually doing to the person's arm.
Yeah, and things like I would say more with manipulating people into a sweep or something like that. So from changing positions from being on the bottom to being on the top, understanding where you can position sort of their feet to turn their hips out to make them turn onto their backside, or to put their shoulders in a direction that it makes them roll themselves and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
But I think you really need to nail a technique first before you really start immersing yourself in how you can manipulate the mechanics a little bit more.
Yeah, cool.
But that's like anything, like any skill. You're just trying to learn what it's all about first before you start sort of really expanding your brain on it. Almost, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. So when was that? When did you start your white belt?
Oh, white belt was 17 years ago. And this is like back in my day. But when I first started, I started in northern New South Wales, just sort of Northern Rivers, near where Byron is and stuff like that. I grew up in Byron, but at that period of time, I'd moved out towards Lismore a bit more. Rural areas, you were lucky to have 1, maybe 2 black belts in a city, apart from Melbourne at the time. And Sydney had a few, but anywhere above that, you were lucky to have 1, maybe 2 black belts in any major city. So I started with a friend of mine. We downloaded some tutorials, and we were just going through them, and then training with each other for about 6 months. And then I found out that there was a school in the area. And back at the time when I started training with them, it was white belts teaching white belts, and we had an affiliate in the Gold Coast. So it was kind of the blind leading the blind. So back in that time, when you found out that there was a blue belt in your area, you're like, who is this wizard, and where can we teach me your ways, O master, sort of thing. So pretty much wearing a Gandalf hat. So it was really rare that you'd get access to knowledge. And there's such a vast array of content on YouTube and instructionals and things like that at the moment that, back when I was younger, you were reading from books. So you're doing step by step from books, and no one had really released very much online content at the time.
Yeah, right.
So you really were scratching for information. And
so is it a lot quicker now to move through belts, or would you say because the knowledge is there? Or
I think provided that you're doing the reps and things like that, I would say, yeah, I think people have the capacity to progress a lot quicker if they can get the time on the mats. And the fact that now that there's black belts everywhere, like your access to information and a bit more refined level of coaching is there too. So I do think as a result of that, the game of jiu-jitsu is just sort of expanding exponentially comparatively to, I think, when... But I think this is everything, like the fact that there's so much more access to online content, to tutorials and things like that. Any kind of thing is expanding rapidly, and you see that in kids nowadays just nailing things like surfing, skating, all that sort of stuff. They're just doing amazing stuff at such a young age, but I think that's just an access to information, seeing that something can be done and replicating that, and then it gets expanded upon.
Definitely.
I think that's beyond that goes beyond jiu-jitsu now. Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I've trailed off topic a bit.
That's all right. So how many years did it take you?
14. And I had a few sort of random breaks for about 6 months here and there, just because of work or relocating and all that sort of stuff. But I was always pretty full time for that 14 years. Yeah.
And when did you get to Garra in Brisbane?
I think I first went there when I was sort of in the mid stages of my blue belt. I tried to relocate there, but that was the time when we got those really bad floods.
Oh, yep. 2011-ish.
Yeah, something like that. And then I just lost all my work, so then I came back to the Northern Rivers again, trained with the old gym that I was training at. Did my masters while I was there because I wasn't doing anything else. I thought, well, I'll get better educated, and finished that and moved back up and was back up with Ed for the rest of my tenure, basically. So
yeah, cool. And then you ended up in Nambour opening your own branch of it.
Yeah, it was something that I'd always wanted to do. I'd always wanted to coach and have my own gym. So whenever my wife and I would go holidays in places, it's the first thing I'd look up, because I like doing jiu-jitsu on holidays and stuff. So I'd check out if there's any gyms. And before we came, we were always talking about, why don't we just move to the sunny coast? Because we come here for holidays anyway. And we drove through Nambour once and just doing the thing, checking, there's no jiu-jitsu in Nambour. Okay, well, this is where we'll make a school then. And all the numbers kind of fit, like relocating and doing something like that, there's always a bit of an inherent risk. But I think two factors are in my favour. One is that jiu-jitsu is highly addictive, and good community and stuff that makes people want to go all the time. And two, that the way, and this was prior to the property boom and everything going crazy around here, but we saw the potential in Nambour to grow with families and things like that. Yeah. And I think, for adults, that's the biggest demographic, is the older, not older guys, but, like late 20s, early 30s, just got a family looking for something to do.
Yeah, right.
And, of course, kids as well. So there was a gap in the market kind of thing for it. So it was a bit of a risk, but it's certainly calculated sort of thing, definitely.
You enjoying Nambour?
I do, yeah. My wife and I really like it. We've made quite a nice home for ourselves and a life here, and the Nambour people are pretty good. Sometimes there's a bit of a rough element, but that's everywhere. So, like a rough element's really easy to avoid, so you just don't be there.
Lismore would have been rough.
Lismore was about the same. There's a lot of parallels between Nambour and Lismore. I think. Yeah, they're running the same race almost, sort of thing. So
it's changing in Lismore too.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it was changing when I was living there as well, with the nature of like Byron just going crazy in terms of property and virtually unlivable for a lot of people. Everyone's moving out towards that area and stuff now.
Essentially the same thing as here, right? There's
pretty much.
No more room over the other side, so...
Nah, that's it, That's it.
Yeah, everyone here's moving to Gympie.
Yeah.
So, do you meditate at all?
I used to a lot. I was doing Shaolin Kung Fu for about 8 years prior to doing Jiu Jitsu, and they used to do a lot of Qigong. And at the time, I was working in women's fashion. There's a lot of stressed people running around you, and I found it quite useful because it kept me calm and just made me realise there's nothing I can do about it. I can only do what I can do.
Yeah, right.
And there's no use stressing about the rest of it, which used to annoy him a bit. But what can you do?
I've never done Qigong before, but there's I know a few people who are doing it. The corrective culture guys, they do a 100-day gong. Have you done that or
no?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like I see Qigong as a vehicle to better prepare you for seated meditation, because it's actually really hard to be still and meditate if you haven't sort of got an idea of how to master your breath and things like that. I reckon, and making pairing something that's relatively automated like a breath with something that you can control, like the movements of your hand and things like that, makes you more aware of how you hold your breath, where you're holding it, how deep your inhales and exhales are, and things that sort of helps you focus on the breath a bit more.
So what's the actual practice? Like, what are you doing when you're doing?
There was a series of 8 movements, and it's very much it's very similar to Tai Chi, but without what they would consider a martial component to it. So. Okay. Yeah, different manoeuvres for different. They call them scales at the ones that we learnt. But different movements, series of different movements, and that's about it really. It's and you're pairing in breaths with out breaths, and sort of like with particular movements of that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I found it pretty beneficial because I found seated meditation difficult, and I was always on the go. So like I'd sort of use what you did with the movements of your hands and things like that and just sort of translate it to, well, I'm walking, I'll take however many steps in, however many steps out. And that was a similar kind of function there, just like translate it into just everyday stuff.
Yeah, cool.
And I used more of the stillness kind of component with it when I was trying to get to sleep, was just trying to relax tension in my neck and things like that.
Yeah, cool. What did you find hard about sitting meditation?
I think my body was just always going, oh, you got an itchy nose, just scratch your nose, just scratch it. You're just scratch it. And you're like, no, I don't need to scratch it. You're telling me this to take me away from like having a hard conversation with myself. I'm not scratching my nose. I'm trying to...
Sums it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is difficult. I mean, the other night, Henry and I, my housemate, he hadn't sat for a long time and... like longer than 10, 20 minutes. So I said, let's just commit to 90 and you just drop off whenever you do. I think you got to 40, which was good. But then I got to 70 minutes and I was like, come on, just 20. And it's just same thing. Just, I can't feel my legs, but I'm not moving.
Yeah, that's it. I'm 2/3 away through. I got to finish this.
Yeah. But yeah, it just becomes, your mind's just constantly trying to find a distraction to get away from.
Yeah.
Not thinking or just observing the breath
and having a difficult conversation with your ego too. Your body's going, hey, look over here, look over here. It's like no, have that conversation because it's hard work. Like it's proper meditation is hard work. It's not meant to be easy, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've had this conversation with someone recently. I think meditation can be blissful and everything, but to deal with the shit, it's got to be hard.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, and translating that sensation of it being blissful and stuff, that comes from hard work. And I think anything, and this is where I reckon has the parallels to jiu-jitsu, is that anything can become meditative. You've just got to, it's requires hard work, and mastery of a skill. And meditation is a skill that's got to be mastered too. But once you can master it, you can really utilize it, I think, and it becomes meditative. I was going to stop saying that word. I think it's probably better if we avoid that. But I see that in jiu-jitsu as all the time, like, and that same thing is it can become that, and I'd sort of liken it to being in the zone in a sporting context. As being in the zone, I think, is like sort of getting that blissfulness that you would normally acquire from meditation. It's you're in this zone and you look back and you finish that 5-minute roll or you surf that wave or something. And you go, I don't even remember what happened then, but I know that it was pretty good. Everything was in alignment. Everything was working for you. I think that would be what I would translate to a blissful meditative state. Got it right then. In a meditative context kind of thing. Like, but you have to spend time mastering the skill, like playing guitar or something like that. You know, it's
so then you're in flow almost in the
totally. Yeah. And I think you can master that doing anything. But, you know, if you like it,
you just got to stick to it.
Totally, yeah. And even these things that you don't, that you really, really like, there's going to be times where it sucks and you hate it. But when you get yourself through it, you're grateful for having put yourself through the process.
Yeah, definitely.
Like going to training, there's nights that you're standing at the door like a sulky child, stamping your feet, but then you go and go, oh, geez, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
Because you get uplifted from the experience anyway.
Yeah, that's me a lot of the Tuesday, Thursday mornings.
I was an idiot. I started them at like in the dead of winter, so when getting up to go down there, it was like still dark, and I was like, oh, bugger this.
I think that's when I started as well.
Yeah. That's like, there's lucky there's students coming down because I would normally just sleep in.
So the process from white belt to black belt, give us a bit of an example of that. Was that which are the toughest times, or like which is the most ego destroying?
Geez, I think there's periods of that all the way through. Each belt has its own set of periods where it's quite tough. I'd say purple belt is the toughest one. Because I think white belt, you're starting afresh and everything's tough and you're learning all this new stuff and it's like makes your ears bleed sort of thing, and you're trying to get your head around the underlying concepts around a maneuver and things like this. And blue belt, you're trying to, I guess you could say blue belt, because if you look at it percentage-wise, that's the highest dropout rate is around blue belt. Because once you get to purple, you're locked in. You're like, no, I have to see this through, kind of thing. But yeah, the white and blue, you're kind of establishing like and I bring it a step back. There's a guy that explains it really well called Roy Dean, and I'm going to use his explanation because it's really good. White belt, you're learning the letters and the words. Blue belt, you start to formulate sentences, so you're starting to chain your sequence of movements together to give yourself what you would call a game. Purple belt, you start having like conversations and arguments and rebuttals with your opponent, you know, so you've understood the vocabulary quite well. Now you can have these interactions with people. And then moving on to brown and black is just like an expansion on that kind of thing. You just get better at arguing your point, kind of thing. But coming back to, I would say purple is probably the most ego destroying, because I think you have to have a serious look at your game. And I see purple belt as a period where you fill in the gaps, and a way that you do that is you don't concede you don't concede a point. Like, so if you were thinking of it like in a competition, you never let someone score a point on you or anything like that, and only then do you see where you're really weak. So for example, when I was at about halfway through purple belt, I'd sort of said I'm not really going to progress unless I make changes, because I was happy to be on my back, but in terms of my ability to navigate on my opponent on top, I was really lazy. If I got rolled onto my back, I'm like, oh, I'm fine, I'm home. So for me, it was like I'm no longer allowed to submit off my back anymore. I have to sweep and get on top if I'm to submit kind of thing. So it took away my ability to do all my stuff off my back. I had to get on top if I wanted to finish the roll kind of thing. So that forced me into areas that I wasn't happy with, not happy with, but places that I wouldn't normally go if I removed the choice kind of thing.
Is that because you were comfortable with the moves that you practiced and you knew they worked, so you just kept doing them?
Yeah, totally. And I was happy on my back and sort of happy to work from there kind of thing, because it was, where I'd spent the most time. So I had to force myself out of my comfort zone, and by doing that, completed a bit more of my game sort of thing. I'd say I still prefer being on my back until I sweep, but I'm pretty comfortable on top now sort of thing. It's sort of not something that I go, oh man, there's just this massive divide between the two components kind of thing. But yeah.
Do you know what was that? Is that like a body size thing, or is?
Yeah, I think there's a size and shape thing that happens there.
Yeah.
The nature of you've got people that will tend to be on their back, and they'll tend to be the smaller, probably more mobile people. And then your bigger bloke or bigger people will tend to be top heavy, pressure, passing a lot. And I think that's just the nature of if you're up against a big guy, they're stronger. They can push you on your back and sort of move you around a little bit more. Whereas if you're smaller, you can't move the mountain. You've got to move around the mountain sort of thing. But that usually means that you end up on your back. Yeah, it's rare that you get a big bloke that's comfortable on their back that would prefer being on their back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we've got a couple of guys at our gym that do, but it's rare. I would say, yeah.
Cool. So then you go purple. So why do you reckon the blue belt? Why do you reckon they drop out early? Do you reckon it's the journey's too long from there, or?
I think all the other coloured belts stop being nice to them.
Oh, right.
You're like, okay, you got your blue belt now. We can start smashing you a bit. Yeah. You sort of you've got enough skills now to not get hurt. So and we don't have to be nice to you anymore. And to make sure that you're getting your rolls in and stuff. It's like, no, it's time for you to deal with it. And I think some people don't like it, and I think that's probably why blue belt's a bit more fraught with injury, because they can't dispense with the ego of tapping to a white belt, even though they were a white belt yesterday kind of thing. So they're like, oh, I can't tap to a white belt. And it's like, no, you guys have been training the same amount of time. And then I think the higher belts go a little bit harder on them. So I think it's fraught with a bit more injury too.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it gets tougher from there. And if you're not ready for it, it can be a rude awakening. Yeah, especially when you think that you're getting pretty good, and then you get the new belt, and then people are tougher on you. And you're like, oh, geez, I thought I was getting somewhere.
And then brown belt, you're just refining everything before you come black.
I think brown belt, provided that you do all the work, white, blue, and purple. Brown belts, I think, not far off a black belt anyway, but it's just a chance to explore whatever you want to do. Yeah. From then on, that's to develop your niche or things that you enjoy doing, and to really get into it and expand upon those things. Like, you've done the work now to be able to do all the other things. That's not to say that you're not always learning new stuff. I think you're always, if you stop learning new things, then that's when you get a bit stale. Yeah. So I think it's always important to be learning new stuff. And that therein lies the trick as a coach. You got to find time to do independent learning as well as teaching. But as a coach, I think that's really crucial, because you've got to be constantly learning and it highlights the ability that some of the old things that you thought you used to know could be sharper, because you're learning new things and expanding on new concepts and stuff. So, Are
moves being developed? Like, were they kind of all set?
I think there's new moves, and there's new. I think the moves have always been there, but what people are now doing is developing whole games on things, because of, again, coming back to that access to content and all that sort of stuff. Because you'll have heaps of people go, oh, how's this new move? And then you'll have someone that's been in the game for years going, well, nah, there's a guy that used to do this all the time over here years and years ago, and that was his whole game, or his or her game was these sets of things. So coming back to what we were talking about earlier about access to information and stuff, I think those games would have been brought to the world a lot quicker had this multimedia society we live in been around that at that time too. But that's not to say that there isn't new stuff being constantly developed. When
you say game, you're talking about puzzling together different moves to get to a submission?
So when we're looking at a game, it's a sequence of movements of your preference that would lead you to an end result. So like for myself, I personally favour doing everything I can to get to a certain position to finish in an omoplata, and all those movements will end in a similar kind of area or movement or placement of my body around the shoulder and things like that. So other people will have a really good leg lock game or heel hook. They develop their game to get tangled up in the legs and to just rip their legs apart pretty much. So everyone has these things that they favour to get into the submission that they want, and that's like considered a game. So some people's game might be I stay on top and I look for chokes from mount or things like that. So the answer is always it depends. I think that's the great thing about jiu-jitsu is that you don't necessarily have to have any particular physical attribute to engage in it. The moves kind of find you, I guess, and I don't mean that in this sort of esoteric kind of way. It's just like through just grinding and learning new things, you find which things are really handy for you. Right. So like your moves that are handy for you might not necessarily work for someone else who's stockier and shorter kind of thing. Like whereas you got sort of longer legs and stuff, it suits yourself to a different type of attack stuff. So that your game would be different to someone else's just based on height, width, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, right. Cool. What's the history of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu?
Testing me on that one. So I think after World War II, they had a lot of Japanese sort of immigrating to South America. Just the state of the geopolitical status over there and stuff was like made life untenable there for them. But they got a lot of I think it was either Japanese jiu-jitsu and or judo guys moving to Brazil. Mitsu Maeda, I think, was the Gracie's teacher. Started teaching them, and through years of them practicing, I think it just developed into their own thing based on their environment and stuff like that. And they tended to focus more on the ground techniques and the ground control of it than, because I'm pretty sure Japanese jiu-jitsu used to incorporate strikes and stuff like that as well. Right. But I just think that the Gracies took it and turned it into sort of more that ground fighting and grappling and a gi kind of component sort of thing. And then, there was a few other schools there, Luta Libre. There was heaps of grappling arts around there at the time too that was just culminating in the rise of it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coming from like being what it is sort of thing, and being different to your other grappling arts like the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and the Judo as well. It's just like,
it's not that old then. I thought it would go back centuries.
No, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is not that old, but the whole Jiu-Jitsu in itself has been around for ages, and like grappling's been around for like, ancient Roman.
How's the Japanese one compare? Like similarities or?
Mainly in a gi. I think the difference is between a gi and not wearing a gi. Like I'm pretty sure the Greeks used to do it nude, so I'd prefer a gi. Makes for an easier clean up at the gym at the end of the night. So
Japanese started the gi.
Yeah, I think they've been in a gi.
Yeah.
Because they used to wear the gi underneath their armor. I'm pretty sure as well. Okay. So yeah, so that the armor wouldn't pinch them and things like that. So
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
You answered that well then.
Pardon?
You answered that well. There's a bit of history in it.
Yeah, totally. Got out of that, dodge that bullet.
So in your white belt to black belt, apart from learning how to choke people out, what else do you think you've learnt life skill-wise? What else can jiu-jitsu teach you?
Problem solving under duress, I think, would be a good one. Is whatever happens in your life, no one's tearing your head off, so it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, yeah, things don't matter as much what things that you used to think were really important don't, or were quite stressful, aren't as stressful anymore, because no one's trying to choke you throughout the day. So you're like, oh, that's fine, it doesn't matter. So
yeah,
and I think this is transcending jiu-jitsu, but into most martial arts, is it teaches you the reward of hard work rather than necessarily things, kind of thing, like being rewarded with things. Is no, I got rewarded through the acknowledgement of my effort, if that makes sense. Like, so the tape on your belt and the new belts and things like that doesn't really look like much, but it's a culmination of effort over the last few, however many years it is to achieve that. So I think that's what changes people's perception, is and translates into improvements in your life, is that you'll work harder for things, I think, and you understand that the reward is in the effort, kind of thing. That's the big thing with the jiu-jitsu, but also with most other martial arts too. For me, that's jiu-jitsu was my vehicle, kind of thing, and that's where I found my home, kind of thing. Mainly because I hate getting punched in the head. So any other martial art, I'm like, oh god, that sucked. I lost a textbook. I have to read that again. Like, what's an arm bone? So
cool. Do you compete at all, or?
I'd never enjoyed competing, and this was even before jiu-jitsu, when I used to surf a fair bit. It never tickled my fancy. I did a couple in each belt, but it had never been my driver. And I think in anything, I liked playing basketball. I liked skating. I liked surfing. I liked doing all these things for the pursuit of getting better at it. It never, I don't know. I never felt like I needed to compare myself to other people. I just wanted to get better. And, I roll with a fair few people. Like, I roll with all these guys that compete all the time. So,
same thing.
They dust me up. So I'm like, I know where I am in the grand scheme of things, kind of thing.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I just like doing it. And I've never done sports for the need to compete or beat other people, just because I just want to be good at it.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I've tried to do things.
You said before that jiu-jitsu taught you how to deal with stress under or problem solve under duress. Do you practice any, or is there any breathing techniques you use when you're rolling that kind of help stabilize? I know when I'm kind of in a stressful situation, I'll just go back to the breath and realize there's no problems whatsoever.
Yeah, I think the big thing there is getting your breathing back, getting enough space that you can breathe, and just assessing. Like the big one, coming back to that part about how does it, translate into life, is like, am I in pain or is this just uncomfortable? Like, and I'm like, oh, it's just uncomfortable. Okay, well then just deal with it. Like, it's fine. It's just uncomfortable, Like, but yeah, breathing helps. I sing a song in my head to take me away from being trapped in what's going on at that particular moment. So I find it takes me back from dealing with getting the blinkers on, in terms of dealing with this arm next to me. And like we were saying before, there's that book that I really like reading. It's called The Unfettered Mind. series of essays from a Japanese Zen master to a Japanese sword master, and he talks about the ignorance in the abiding place, and the ignorance being sort of focusing on this one thing at one particular time, and the abiding place being that thing that you're thinking about. And they always the line that I took away from it is, if you focus on the hand, you'll be cut down by the sword. If you focus on the face, you'll be cut down. If you focus on your sword, you'll be cut down by the sword. You've got to be thinking about everything and nothing at the same time. Only then will you live in the moment. So seeing a song in my head sort of takes me away from being, I've got to deal with this right now, to, all right, what's going on? Am I in danger? No, I'm just uncomfortable. Okay, that's fine. And then you're reacting to, my legs are free, I can start moving my legs, and you can start sort of thinking about a bigger picture and what's actually going on. But yeah, breathing definitely helps, and especially in between rounds, when you're looking at, you got to roll with someone else afterwards, that you control your breathing. But again, if you're well rehearsed at that and you're well practiced at that, then your breathing will
just naturally happen. Yeah,
it'll improve quicker. Yeah, like you'll regain yourself a bit quicker and stuff.
Yeah. I have found, I don't know if it's from my meditation practices, but obviously my vocabulary in jiu-jitsu is not there, but I find myself, I'll just be like closing my eyes if someone like Regan's on top of me.
Yeah.
And then I'll have like this awareness of my whole body, so I can feel like if I don't need to watch his arms, because I can almost feel if he's doing something around my legs or whatever. It's like my whole body rather than just my hands.
All of that stuff is because you're in close proximity too. I think closing your eyes helps you access a bit more tactile, a tactile awareness too, rather than sort of just looking at, his arm, it's in my face, oh my God, sort of thing, like, which is, like someone like Regan's arm's pretty big, so takes up all your view.
Awesome. Well, anything else you want to add to the people listening? Why they should come down to your gym and check it out?
I think we've got a really nice group of people. They're very welcoming. They want to see you get better. I think a couple of the things that stops people coming to jiu-jitsu, and this is any place and stuff, is that they think that they're just going to immediately get smashed, and it's just not the case. Even the new white belts that haven't been there for very long, it's like playing with your food. There's no sport in it, so people actually want to see you get better, so that it's a challenge to them to submit you and things like that. So I think you get a lot of support along the way, and I think jiu-jitsu is a unique martial art in that they won't smash resilience into you. They will help you foster resilience until you're such a time where you can be like put under a lot of pressure, put under a lot of duress, and you'll come away with it feeling like your self-efficacy is improved, not necessarily hindered. You won't be coming away going, oh God, I got, your ego's challenged, but it's not battered and bruised kind of thing.
There's a couple women in the...
Yeah. We got some ladies. A couple of them have left, but there's new ladies coming back in and stuff that. But they're always really keen to see more ladies training. They're always happy because they're sick of beating us all up. So they're like, oh, more food. They must get tired beating the crap out of us all the time. So it's good that they get a bit of a change.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, and see you tomorrow morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been good.